one-day sell-off. Now, it was a sell-off which was not profound in nature, but a sell-off which happened because of unexpected factors. Paytm IPO debacle, Reliance pulling out of that proposed demerger, and then farm law reversal. Now, some of these factors are structural, and some of these factors could have an impact in the near-term market momentum. But the other side, which is the optimistic bull in me, tells me that the long-term Indian bull market is intact, because what has happened to Paytm or Reliance demerger or perhaps farm law reversal, that's not going to change the earning trajectory. So how should one read into these three unexpected factors? FI selling, the recent reversal in mid and small cap stocks as indication of what lies ahead. What is the good, bad and ugly in this kind of a market? Hiren Ved joins us now. Let's take our conversation forward. Hiren, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. It was a bit of a uneasy Monday. What is your sense? We've peaked out for the year. We've peaked out till budget. Markets are likely to just moan and groan in a range now.
Yeah, so Nikunj, I think, as I've said before, that you can't have both speed and direction. I think the direction is pretty much intact, in my opinion. The long-term direction, the long-term bull market is very much intact, but I think the speed is going to slow down now. And I think the easy money is done. And we're entering the next phase of the bull market, which is going to be much more measured and much more selective. I think every sector got a chance to re-rate. Probably barring autos and banks, which actually have been lagging the Nifty. But I think overall, it's been a good 12, 18 months, and we shouldn't expect that the kind of momentum that we saw will continue going forward. But I think I still believe very firmly that we continue to be in a bull market. And, you will see these occasional bouts of correction, which are healthy to shake off any complacency. And the markets will become more stock specific than they have been.
Short term and the medium term impact of the Paytm IPO debacle, because it's an eye opener for anger investors, for merchant bankers, and for promoters also, that how could they get it wrong so badly?
Yeah, I think I was on your show maybe 2 weeks ago, and this question was asked to me about the new age tech IPOs. And I did mention at that time that, you have to be extremely selective. And people forget that, this is the temple of capitalism. Arrogance doesn't work. The market will cut down everybody to size. So I think that it was a good lesson for everybody, as you rightly mentioned, all the stakeholders in the IPO, that, if you don't leave any upside for the investors, then someday the investors are going to vote very, very strongly. And I think that's what happened in the Paytm IPO. So I hope that there is more rationality that will come in, and valuations will be far more reasonable. I think many of the new entrepreneurs who will come to the stock market will realize that it's all very easy when you're doing your series A, B, C, D, and people are bidding up valuations. But this is the final temple where price discovery happens. And, there are expectations that you got to meet. And if you don't leave money on the table, then, it's not going to be a very easy ride. And the first expectations or the first experience of the investors is extremely important, right? There is a reason why people say that, everybody in the journey along the way should make money.
So what happens to two categories of stocks? One, the existing new tech companies post the Paytm, and then what happens to the so-called big banks which have suffered because of this entire fintech fear? because banks at a category, in a sense, they've underperformed because there's this fear that the world will be taken over by fintech. So do you see a re-rating there and a de-rating in the new tech companies post Paytm, because the trade has to adjust both ways now?
I still feel it's too early, Nikunj, because you know how technology interweaves with existing businesses. Only time will tell, right? And I think, especially in the financial services space, you know, our view is that you know, both banks and fintechs will have to work together, and because this is a highly regulated business, right? The fintechs can't build a liability franchise. They're not allowed to take deposits, which is what gives them stability. The only way fintechs can make money ultimately is by lending. And if you have to lend, which means you need a very solid liability franchise, what the fintechs can probably do very well is digitally originate loans or transactions, and then they have to figure out a way to make money. And in India, as you know, regulators are very much friendly to the individual investors or the borrowers. It's very your margins are going to be extremely thin if you're just trying to make money on transactions. There is no money in payments, right? Unless MDR comes back. But the advantage that the fintechs have got is their ability to originate loans digitally, but you can't lend because you don't have a stable liability franchise. So they will have to work with the banks to build a solid business model that makes money for them. Yes, they have access to data, but then so do very smart digital banks, and NBFCs also have access to data. And nothing stops them from acquiring customers digitally, like what an ICICI Bank or a Bajaj Finance is doing. So I think that both will have to coexist and figure out a business model where they leverage on each other's strengths. The banks have the ability, they have a solid liability franchise. And on the asset side, the fintech companies are very agile, and they can give a customer experience which is superior. So I think going forward, unless they work together, and we also have to keep an eye on how the RBI or the regulation thinks about fintechs, because they don't want any systemic risks to come up. So I think it's going to be an interesting space, but it will evolve over a period of time. So I think it is still wait and watch, before things settle down. It's like what happened to the FMCG industry, right? So when when Patanjali came, people thought that, oh, it's going to it's going to derate the other FMCG players. So initially there was a derating of the FMCG players. Obviously, anybody who's new comes and disrupts, takes a little bit of market share. Now everything is settled, right? People don't talk about the disruption to FMCG companies because of Patanjali. So I think something similar is going to happen. There will always be a fear initially that the fintechs will take away market share, but I think things will settle down over a period of time. It's still an evolving phase, in my opinion.
I share with our viewers is Bill Gates. World always overestimates disruption in the short term, underestimates in the long term, and I guess there are a lot of pockets where this disruption about fintech, EV is simply getting completely mispriced. Here in blink of an eye, and metal stocks have corrected 10 to 15%. A stock like Tata Steel is off from 1500 to almost 1200. It was sub 1200 yesterday. Is the bull market in metals intact? And if it is it a good time to re-enter or add more into positions of metal stocks now?
So I think, Nikunj, metals is, I do believe that the bull market in metals is intact, but this space is extremely volatile. And, more than micro factors, macro factors do have a humongous bearing on how metal stocks behave, not necessarily metal companies, right? So metal company profitability is still pretty much intact, but there are a lot of moving parts. But metal company stock prices are not necessarily only a function of company profitability. There are a lot of macro factors that decide how metal stocks will behave. So, for example, if the dollar index goes up, metals correct. If something happens in China, metals correct, right? Then again, there is good news, metals will bounce back, right? So, the journey is not very smooth. Uh, but I do believe that the long-term structural factors which initially led to the rally in metal stocks are still pretty much there. That there is decarbonization, China is ramping down capacity, but as I said, they are very sensitive to macro news. So, for example, if COVID cases in Europe go up, people feel, oh, again there are lockdowns. That has an impact on. So, I think you have to tread into that sector very carefully, and you got to size your positions if you want to make money on the metal sector. So if you can manage the volatility and if you can manage the sizing in your portfolio, I think there is still money to be made in the metal sector. But if you believe that from here on the metal sector competes with any other sector in terms of returns, then that's a choice that people have to make I don't have to necessarily make money in one or the other sector. It depends on, how. So I mean, to answer your question, I think the metal companies will continue to do very well. Their cash flows and profitability will still be intact and should grow. And the deleveraging continues. But, it's very, very sensitive. We are heading into a era now where you will keep hearing about interest rates going up, Fed tightening, dollar index going up. I mean, those are things that you will have to manage if you want to stay investors in this in this sector.
A line sectors which have got derated, and sectors which could get derated because of concerns about inflation and valuation, and sectors which could got re-rated. So let's talk about sectors for a change where derating could happen. It could be on terminal value, it could be because of inflation, it could be because of valuation. Where do you see that happening?
So I think typically, Nikunj, if you see, generally speaking, during rising rates, you have the typical growth stocks which do get impacted because the terminal value, probably reduces, right? But that's a very generic issue. You also have to understand that what's the runway for growth? If the runway for growth is reasonably long, then I think you will be fine. You could see a temporary cooling down of valuations, but then earnings growth has to take over. I think the risk is really where you're giving a higher valuations and you don't know whether earnings will compensate for a compression, some compression in valuations or P's that may happen. So I think it is going to be from here onwards, the profit and the cash flow trajectory of some of these growth companies is going to be extremely important, right? So I think that is where, in my opinion, one needs to be careful that, if you are in a high PE, high growth company, you better be very sure about the earnings growth trajectory. If the earnings are growing, you'll be fine.
And where do you see in that light a sector like pharma is headed? Because this is one sector where you felt like a bull market in 2020, but it reminds you of a bear market in 2021. I mean, no sector has seen this kind of an experience of a bear and a bull market coexistence in a matter of 6-8 months.
Yeah, I agree, Nikunj. It's a little bit perplexing, pharma. Actually, if you see in the fall of 2020, two sectors actually bounced and did extremely well, right? One was tech, IT services, and the other one was pharma. While tech continued the leadership, pharma gave up that leadership, right? And again, pharma is a very complicated sector. There are regulatory issues, there are product issues, there are many moving parts, US price competition, a lot of those have also played their part. I think longer term, I think that there is money to be made, but again, you can't take a generic call on the sector. You have to be very, very stock specific. So I think the sector will come back. I'm not saying that the sector won't come back, but I think that also because what happens is that the weight of the sector is so significantly small in the index that, generally people who index don't really bother if one or two pharma companies outperform, because it doesn't really impact their performance, right? So I think it's a sector which will eventually make money for investors, but you will have to be stock specific. You can't take a sector call. Overall, I think there is still opportunity in companies which are largely in APIs. And, there the China plus one opportunity is very solid and it's not going away. And I think that there is money to be made. But if you're betting on generics, then that's a fairly complicated sector, because what happened was that initially there was a lot of excitement about the opportunity on vaccines. Then slowly that opportunity and the excitement waned away. There were a lot of one-time earnings which accrued to companies in 2020 in a couple of quarters, because there were certain kind of medicines which were sold more, and there was also a lot of pre-buying which happened, stocking that happened. So I think, you need probably a couple of more quarters for investors to realize that you are now seeing a normalized growth rate on a quarter-on-quarter basis in pharmaceuticals. So I think that should happen now. But on the whole, I think the attractiveness and the long-term competitive advantage of Indian pharma continues. I think it's a large area. And, Indian companies have traditionally always had a great competitive edge. And we should not forget, Nikunj, that, it's because of the pharma sector that we are all sitting pretty today. Just imagine if Indian pharma sector did not have the ability to develop its own vaccines. And then this country had, if God forbid, this country had to rely on imported vaccines to vaccinate 1.3 billion people, I don't think our economy would have had a chance to recover, because of vaccination is the reason why the economy is now opening up and things can start to behave. So I think the strength and the competitive advantage of the pharma sector cannot be overlooked. If we didn't have our own domestic vaccines, I think this country would be in great trouble when it came to the economy.
Well, I don't want to even think, and I shudder to think what scenario would have been if we did not have our own manufacturing capacity and capabilities. So Hiren, where are you shopping in this market? Because the decline has kicked in selectively. There's a long list of stocks where you can see a 15 to 30% correction which has kicked in. So for a stock picker, this is a delightful market, because you know that the economy and earnings is headed in the right direction, and yet markets are obliging with the correction because of technical factors. Where are you shopping in this market, and what are you shopping? That is more important.
So Nikunj, I think, we are pretty much, fully invested. So I think we only shop when new money comes in. And I think we are pretty much betting on some of the themes that, I've been talking about. Our big bets continue to be in tech. We have some exposure, though not very significant, in specialty chemicals. We have exposure in pharma. But I think incrementally, if you ask me, we see opportunity in consumer discretionary, all the sectors that are opening up and are likely to benefit as a result of the opening up. They haven't seen, most of them are just about seeing recovery come back to pre-pandemic levels. And we are seeing consolidation there. So I think, stocks like liquor stocks, we love them. I think, some of the retailers, some of the QSR companies, uh, auto ancillaries. I think these are areas which incrementally should do very well going forward from here. And I also think selectively, I think banking and, NBFCs, we continue to be bullish on Bajaj Finance and ICICI Bank. So I think we continue to focus on some of our core holdings there. And I think on the mid cap side, we are fairly bullish on the ER&D companies, as I've always said, selective, time and again, that they are in a structural growth phase, and that leadership in my mind should continue.
Nice to have you back on ET Now. Certainly hope to see much more of you going forward.
Sure.
Let's take a break.